Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news as Manchester United target 2 key players already. This build don't stop. It's progress. And I tell you what, I'm here for it because it's something a little bit new. We'll talk about that. Also, a major new update coming in on the stadium of Manchester United and the surrounding areas this Monday morning. That's the big news drop, people. We'll be talking about that. I would say the biggest question about this new stadium is, before you get excited about your brand new living room, who's paying for it and who owns it? That's all I'm going to say about this because, shiny new stadium. How much do we own of that stadium? Because you make a lot of money from match day revenue. We do not want to be giving percentages away to councils and governments. So these sorts of things is how are we going to pay for it and how are we going to make the money for it? And fundamentally, this Manchester United fan base has always had the working person at the core of this football club. And we must remember our roots. You know, Manchester United is not about shiny new toys paid for by somebody else where we don't take any money from it. We've got to do that. Also, we're going to talk about... we've got a mic drop as well. You might have seen Ronaldo yesterday, Cristiano, doing a little video where it's winner stays on with players. And I think Giggs stayed on a lot. Well, Chris has sent us a message and said, Goldbridge, I've been watching the channel for a long time. I've just given you a Man United winner stays on list that is going to tie you up in knots this Monday morning and is probably the hardest one ever. I've read the list. I've not thought about the list. And let me just tell you, it's winner stays on. It starts with Giggs and Beckham. And it has the likes of Rooney, Cantona, Van Nistelrooy, Scholes, Ronaldo. It's going to be a big one. But look, let's get into the show. Lots to get into. Very interesting news drop this morning, actually, coming from the Manchester Evening News, who, as you know, I don't massively respect for obvious reasons. But ultimately, this story came out this morning, and the timing of it, I will focus in on, because the story we were always leading on this morning was Ederson, based on a bit of work we'd done ourselves. So Ederson is the obsession for Manchester United as their next midfielder. We are scouting him as extensively as we did last season. We've held discussions with Atalanta, and he is seen as the player that Man United want, much the same as we wanted Elise last year. Now, obviously, we didn't get Elise and Branthwaite, but that doesn't mean that you don't have your players that you really want to go for. Now, before we talk about what we know about Ederson, listen to this that is coming from the Manchester Evening News this morning. Manchester United's provisional plan is to sign a defender, a midfielder, and a winger next summer, with EZE of Crystal Palace of interest. So that's coming in from the Manchester Evening News. Now, remember, we're a news show in the morning, so that's what we're here to talk about. And we've got this story about the stadium and a Yoro wages story, which is concerning a lot of United fans. Remind me about that one as well. But I think the first thing I would say is that particular journalist in the Manchester Evening News did this last year and probably the year before, but definitely did it last year. The transfer window closes, and this particular journalist, who in the summer transfer window had no sources on who we were going to sign, the minute the transfer window closes, starts talking about next summer and what we're going to do. I always find that quite incredible, that you have no information across the actual summer transfer window, and then the minute the window closes, you know what we're doing next summer. It doesn't make any sense, does it, when you put it like that? So, yeah, this happened last year. The window closed and he was talking to us about who we were going to sign next summer. Don't worry, every player that he said didn't happen. So I don't believe that EZE is a Man United major target for next summer because it's too soon. It's way too soon. We didn't even go for a winger in the summer, and if we wanted a winger, EZE was available. So let's talk about EZE for a moment. Before we talk about a genuine link, which is Ederson. So in relation to EZE, very, very good player. Had a very good start to the season with Crystal Palace. Plays off the left, gets in the England team. And I think most people in this chat would be very open to EZE coming to Man United. And not for 1 minute am I saying it won't happen. That's not what I'm saying. Let's talk about the player. So contract till 2027. Obviously, next summer's 2025. He's in that golden period of 2 years left on his deal, which will bring his price down because if Palace let it go down into his last year, you're in a bit of trouble. So there is a willingness from Palace to do a deal anyway. their owner, which I think is their owner Simon Parrish or Paris or someone like that. He's already openly spoken in the last couple of weeks about how surprised he was that there was no interest in EZE. So they're open to doing a deal with somebody. The reason EZE didn't leave Palace is baffling. It's baffling to me. Fantastic glow up over the last 2 years. Fantastic talent in the England squad. So everything going for him. But I think ultimately the reason EZE didn't leave Palace is because the price point for Palace is probably 60 million. Let's start talking. And as we know with PSR and FFP and all this nonsense, clubs just don't have that amount of money anymore. So that is why EZE is still at Palace. This is why Watkins is still at Villa and EZE is still at Newcastle and Bruno Guimaraes is still at Newcastle. There is a lot of interest in these players, but not at the price point the clubs have got every right to ask for. So the Arsenals and the Manchester Cities of this world, they just can't pay £100 million for Watkins or EZE or Bruno Guimaraes. And certainly the Spurs and Arsenals can't go and pay 60, 70 million for EZE. That's why he's still there. And Lightning says the prices are stupid. I think they are stupid, but I think the clubs that are selling have every right to ask for it. If I was Aston Villa, I'd want £100 million for Watkins. And if I was Crystal Palace, I'd want 60 for EZE. The price is right. The problem is the clubs don't have the money because of the stupid Premier League rules that we have at the moment. Anyway, could Man United move for EZE next summer? He will be on the list. I would imagine he was on the list this summer. My only issue with us being linked to EZE next summer now is that we could easily have pivoted, I love that word, from Elise to EZE. We could have easily done that. I mean, Crystal Palace have got an overload last summer of two fantastic creatives in EZE and Elise. Elise obviously was our high priority signing. He went to Bayern Munich. We didn't pivot to EZE. So I don't genuinely believe that we are prioritising EZE next summer. I think we need a winger. I think we want a winger. You can speculate, you can understand, you can disagree, you can agree. But the bottom line is, coming into this summer transfer window, I don't think there was a higher priority for Ineos than Elise. I genuinely don't think there was a player that we bought or looked at that was more of a priority than Elise. From very early days of Ineos coming in, literally February, it was out there in the industry that Man United were obsessed with Elise. And we knew about it. We spoke about it and we knew about it. From March to the end of the season, there was almost this acceptance that he was going to be wearing a Man United shirt. And Bayern Munich came in and did a very good deal. And these things can happen. And I don't think that was weak negotiating from Manchester United. I just think that financially we probably didn't expect Bayern Munich to come in and we missed out. But we never went anywhere else. We didn't go for Kingsley Coman. We didn't go for EZE. We didn't go for anybody else. Bringing in a winger for Man United, I think, is a priority. But I think they looked at the situation and went, look, Sancho needs to go. Anthony long-term probably needs to go. But we've got Garnacho, we've got Ahmad. We have got some younger players that can come through. And we've got Rashford. We do need a winger. But let's wait for the right winger. And as Sir Jim Radcliffe said, let's walk to the right decision. Let's not run to the wrong decision. And I think that if we wanted EZE, we would have moved for him. So I don't know that we will go for him. But he is certainly somebody where I do agree with this. And I must just apologise. I'll be stunned if I don't sneeze this morning. I don't know whether anybody suffers with allergies or stuff, but for some reason it's pivoted big time at the start of September. But yeah, I do find the article interesting in the sense of it mentions a winger, a defender, and a midfielder. I mean, I think that's an absolute open goal. I think my gran could tell me the 3 targets for United next summer, but I'm not 100% concerned. I'm not 100% convinced that it's EZE. Now, moving to Ederson, which is the story we were going to lead on this morning. Now, going back to Elise and the fact that he was a high priority obsession for Ineos that didn't come off. Move to Ederson of Atalanta. This player could well be our Elise this season. And hold that thought for a moment because it might lead to us not getting him. Now, you're never going to get much out of Manchester United. We've asked the question, are Manchester United actively scouting Ederson this season? And the answer is Manchester United are actively scouting a lot of players at a lot of times. And the second part to it was basically that under Ineos, Manchester United's obsession to continue building this project out and taking Manchester United back to the top continues. I read into that with two things. One, if you weren't scouting him, you could just tell us. And two, this is a new Manchester United where a transfer window doesn't close and that's all you're getting. We've seen that with the Glazers. We certainly saw it under Mourinho. There's your good summer, go to work. This is not the message coming out of Manchester United. If anything, the message coming out of Man United at the moment is we're happy with the summer transfer window that we had, but to pretend it was perfect would be bullshit. They haven't said the bullshit. To pretend it was perfect would be bullshit. And also, it was very chaotic. Dan Ashworth didn't come in until July. Barada didn't come in until July. Jason Wilcox only started in May. Ineos only started in February. Next summer transfer window is being planned for already. Nothing's really been said about January. Can't add anything about that. We're all very interested about January, but next summer is being planned for already. I don't really want a statement like John Murtagh used to say, we don't care about the January transfer window, we're more about the summer, because I think it's idiotic to ignore the January transfer window, especially when you're trying to rebuild. You can do good business then. But one of the big positives about Manchester United off the pitch is that whatever happened in the summer transfer window is not a one-off. Barada said this last week. It's coming out of the club again this morning. We are relentlessly obsessive about rebuilding this football club, and conversations do not stop because the transfer window is closed. They are going to continue. There are players they wanted in the summer that they didn't get, and they still see that those are holes in the team. They definitely wanted a second midfielder. They definitely wanted a winger, and they definitely wanted a left-footed centre-back. I don't think Branthwaite is dead in the water. I really, really don't. I don't think that a winger is dead in the water. I really, really don't. But the player I want to talk to you about is Ederson. So with Ederson, Manchester United were holding talks with Atalanta about 4 weeks ago, and Ederson was mentioned. They are still scouting at Atalanta extensively. Now, look, there are other players we could be looking at there. You know, Scalvini was a player mentioned in the past. I don't think he's back from injury yet. But Ederson remains a high priority. The words obsession have been used in relation to Dan Ashworth and Ederson. It was a player he tried to take to Newcastle in January. And he, again, fits the profile of what Manchester United are looking for. A player that is under 26, who can come into this football club hungry, ready to take the next step. His contract's up in 2027. I think he's currently 24. I think I did right. No, he might be 25 now. So, again, perfect. And, of course, the pivot to that, I've used pivot too many times this morning, is that Ederson, Amrabat, Zubimendi, whoever the other midfielder is you want, Casemiro, Ederson, gone next summer. If Man United can do what they want to do, Eriksen's 100% gone, his contract's over, and Casemiro goes as well. Even if Toby Collier comes through and realises the talent that many of us think he's got, United still need to bring another midfielder in. And at the moment, Ederson is that number one target for that. However, one of the things that are coming out is that you've got to be very, very careful about this, because Ederson plays for Atalanta. They're in the Champions League. I think they play Arsenal in their first game next week. And United are fully aware that they're not the only club that could be looking at Ederson. And another season at Atalanta playing in the Champions League can only display what he's all about. I mean, I've had feedback about Ederson from people who've played with him saying he's got to come to the Premier League. He's absolutely incredible. So, you know, very interesting. I think at the moment, Savage says he'll be expensive. Well, he might be expensive, but on the other hand, he's only got 2 years left on his contract in the summer, and he would be a player that I think at this moment in time is Man United's number one midfield target. Right, I want to move on just very quickly because some people are saying about Leny Yoro. So this story came out today. Manchester United signed Yoro in a deal worth up to basically £60 million, fending off interest from Real Madrid. According to Marca, which is a Madrid-based paper, the 18-year-old opted to join Man United over Real due to their significantly higher financial package. The report claims he leaned towards Man United's offer of $8 million over Real Madrid's 1.7 proposal. Naturally, the reported new information regarding the details is got people talking. I mean, £8 million over 2 million a year. Can somebody, I mean, I'm just trying to figure that out very, very quickly. Apparently, this has caused a lot of consternation and stunned Real Madrid's fans. I'll try to do quick maths here, but 8 million is about £160,000 a week. If Real Madrid were giving him 2 million a year, what is that? That's about 50 grand a year. That can't be right. That can't be right. You're telling me that Real Madrid were going to give him 50 grand a week? I suppose he's 18. We're giving him about 160 grand a week, and Real Madrid wanted to give him about 60 grand a week. I don't think we've overpaid massively for him on that wage. And I'm surprised that Real Madrid would go in with such a low offer. So all I'm saying is, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I'm completely comfortable with £8 million a year for Leny Yoro to stop him going to Real Madrid and to come to us. He's still got to sign. If Real Madrid wanted to give him 50, 60, 70k a week, that's up to them. For an 18-year-old, I sort of get it if you've got a free hit. And he probably wasn't on very good money in France, let's be honest. But 160k a week for Man United is cheap. You know, we gave Maguire 190k 6 years ago. So look, I know it's a lot of money for an 18-year-old, but if you trust in what you're buying, then look, I'm not uncomfortable with 160k a week, because I think that's what you needed to pay to get him. I'd be uncomfortable if it was 250k a week. I mean, bloody hell, we are giving man 350k a week to some of our players at the moment. So I'm not completely uncomfortable with that. You know, I'll throw that out there. What is the exact position Rashford plays, says Ben. He's not out-and-out striker, but he certainly isn't a winger. Wingers like to take on and cross. He put 2 good crosses in against Liverpool, Ben. I hope he can do more of that, because I think you're right, we do need that. But for me, Rashford is a striker off the left. He's not a striker who can play down the middle. He's a striker who plays off the left. Liam says, I don't think we'll get EZE. Wants his style of creation, though, says Liam. The winger I would be signing is Anthony Gordon, says Ben. Mate, I would love Anthony Gordon at Man United. I'd absolutely love Anthony Gordon at Man United. I've always liked him as a player. I didn't like him at Everton, actually. I didn't get the hype. You know, when Chelsea wanted him and when Newcastle bought him, I didn't get it. I really didn't. And maybe that was just my, you know, how have Everton produced a player like that, although they did do it with Rooney. But as soon as he went to Newcastle, under Eddie Howe, I saw it. And his work rate, his directness, his creativity, his goals, and, you know, if you watch that interview he did with Gary Neville as well, unbelievable. Unbelievable mentality as well. So, I mean, if I was United, I would move heaven and earth to sign Anthony Gordon, because it's the elite mentality as well. It's just, that interview is so good. So good. Anyway, let's talk about the new stadium. This is a new statement coming out from Manchester United. Lots to get into, and don't forget, you're going to see the most horrible. I'm squirming on a Monday morning for this. I've been given the most horrible Man United player winner stays on scenario. We'll do it in a minute, and you can play along as well. But the point is that you're not meant to hesitate. So we'll do that in a minute or two. But this is coming out from Manchester United officially. Old Trafford project to drive regeneration of area. Manchester United, Trafford Council and the Greater Manchester Combined Authority have entered into a strategic partnership to maximise the growth and regeneration opportunities of the Trafford Wharfside area. Basically, what this is to do with is the new stadium. Lord Sebastian Coe, who is chair of the task force and was involved in the London Olympics in 2012, has said, the objective of this once-in-a-generation project is not only the development of a world-class stadium for the north of England, but also to ensure that this brings broad social and economic benefits to the local area and surrounding region. There is a huge opportunity to connect Trafford Wharfside regeneration with the ongoing growth of neighbouring Media City in Salford and Greater Manchester's Western Gateway and Central Growth cluster plans to create a project of national significance for the club and for the area. The Mayor, Andy Burnham, said Greater Manchester has a strong claim to be the biggest footballing city region on the planet. Few places come close. The future of Old Trafford is the next chapter of that story, and we have a chance now to make sure it's written properly. With this new partnership, we have the expertise, the vision and the passion to drive forward. Also, there's a lot of talk about, our plan is up for 5,000 new homes, new opportunities for retail space and better connections between the city, Salford and Manchester. We want, and look, basically that's all it's about. There's two big questions about this. I don't know what the groups connected with Manchester United Football Club are going to do, i.e. the Manchester United Supporters Trust and the Fans Advisory Board, etc. I don't know whether they'll have any say in this at all, but there's two big questions, isn't there? Ginny says it's PR mileage. For me, PR mirage. For me, there's three things to consider here. First of all, we definitely need a new stadium. Second of all, these are not the 3 points. Secondly, we do need... If you've been to Old Trafford recently, our studio is very close to Old Trafford. It is an area that is unique, but it also is 100%. The city centre of Manchester is growing out every time you go up, and the area around Old Trafford is getting closer to that. It needs regeneration. It definitely does. You've got hotel football, you've got Old Trafford, you've got a few shops, and there's a lot of space. And there's a lot of roads. There's a lot of infrastructure. And there is so much that can be done. If you look at London, it's sprawling. London's massive. And Manchester can expand, and it is expanding. So expanding that retail, modern city vibe to Old Trafford is logical because they're not actually that far apart. So the regeneration of the area makes total sense and needs to happen. What I would say is this was part of the Qatari model to build it with their own money. So we would have owned all of it, basically. They'd have owned they'd have owned Manchester United, but the Qatari model was to regenerate the area. They were going to do that with their own money. They were going to clear the debt. They were going to build a stadium, and they were going to regenerate the area with their own money. So it was going to happen with the alternative model as well. So thumbs up from me, from Ineos and the Qatari model as well, because they were both going to do it and it needs to happen. So first of all, people saying it's PR, it needs to happen. If you've been there, it needs to happen. It has to happen. The city centre is getting closer and it will get swallowed up. So it needs to happen. The second thing I would say is, when is it going to happen? For us as Manchester United fans, it's great to talk about it and we can have a look at the project pictures, but when is it going to happen? That's the second point. The third point is, and it's a matter of interest, who's funding it? How much will we earn from it? Because if you look at something like Arsenal, it cost them a hell of a lot of money to build that stadium. And for that period, Wenger sort of kept them alive. Remember the 4th place cup? That was so important to them because Arsenal didn't have massive amounts of money because they were building a stadium. Now they've got that stadium, that revenue rolls in. I think the situation is similar to at Spurs as well. I think they pretty much own their stadium and the money rolls in. We need to own our stadium and the revenue from it needs to roll into the football club. Few people have raised concerns about how can we afford this, and if we're involving the council and the government, what ownership do they have of Manchester United's new stadium? Because if they have an ownership or a percentage of it, they'll have a percentage of revenue and gate receipts and everything else. What I want to see happen is that we build our own bloody stadium and then the council pay for everything else around it. The infrastructure, the housing, the flats, the retail. If they want to build all that, we're never going to be able to afford that because this is not Qatar. So if we can build our stadium amongst all this regeneration and the 100% of the revenue for that stadium comes into the football club, happy days. But we can't have part ownership of a new stadium because we can't afford to build it. Because that to me defeats the purpose of what we were trying to achieve before this deal happened with the Glazers. We wanted 100% ownership from the new owner with the debt gone and the money spent on the stadium by the new owner with a long-term project. And basically, if you were a multi-billionaire and you bought Man United and you spend your own money building a stadium, yeah, you've got to spend, but over the next 20 years, you're going to get that money back, because if Man United have got a 100,000 capacity stadium, you're going to fill it every week and that money will start rolling in. So the most important thing from my point of view is that we actually own the stadium. It's all very exciting having Lord Sebastian Coe and Andy Burnham talking about the area, and I don't care about that. Great. But keep your hands out of our next stadium, because we cannot be giving up 30%, 25% of our revenue for the next 20 years because they're going to help us build a stadium of the North. We've got to have that. And we don't know the answer to that at the moment. We will end up with a shiny new stadium, but you know, we've got to make that stadium make us money, and we can't do that if we're giving up a percentage to the government. Marlow FC says, EZE makes sense. We've got rid of a lot of homegrown players and only bought in foreign. If we need next season to get rid of Maguire and maybe Shaw, don't you think we can only really look at homegrown? I think Marlow makes a great point about homegrown and EZE. I mean, let's run a quick poll on this. We need a winger. Would you sign EZE? Yes or no? I like EZE. I really, really do. By the time he came into the club, he'd be 27 next summer. So age-wise, not terrible, not perfect, but not terrible at 27. Honestly, I wouldn't be going for EZE next summer. I wouldn't. I think you've got to be looking at... It's funny, we've got a show on That's Football in the Goldbridge Arms at midday, and we're sort of like doing a Premier League half-term report after 3 weeks. The club's in trouble. Obviously, Man United are going to feature. But we've also got a section about who's the best player in the world at the moment, because it's the first year that Ronaldo and Messi have not been in the top 30 Ballon d'Or contenders. So we're going to talk about who the best player in the world is, but also who's going to be who are going to be the dominant forces over the next 5 years in the Ballon d'Or. And there are so many players out there that are sort of aged between sort of 17 and 24. You know, you've got people like Bellingham, Endrick, Yamal, Vinicius Jr., Kylian Mbappe is still only 25, Haaland's 24, Pedri. There are so many talented players between the age of 17 and 24 that I think... it would, you know, and look, let's not forget Mainu and Garnacho. Like, it's not like we haven't got young players ourselves. But when I think about wingers, and especially when you think about someone like Yamal at Barcelona, do you want 26 EZE at United next summer, or do you want to do some real proper scouting and maybe try and find... Because what Real Madrid have done really well is that they've shown that you can have 18, 19, 20-year-olds winning a Champions League for you. So I think Real Madrid at the moment have sort of changed the way that football is working now, where you can accumulate these... We've done it with Yoro. We've done it with Yoro, we've done it with Garnacho, and we've done it with Mainu. You can have teenagers playing in your team, winning trophies, if they are the right quality with the right mentality. And when I think about United's next winger, do I think EZE is the guy? I think he could be the guy, but I also think with proper scouting, you might find somebody who's like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that comes in a little bit cheaper, needs a little bit more development, but needs that platform. So I wouldn't be rushing to focus all in on EZE in September when you're not going to bring them in until next summer. I'd certainly be doing a thorough scouting search, which is the message that's coming out of Man United, that we're not going to stop. We're going to keep relentlessly looking to improve. I loved what Barada said last week. Like, this summer cannot just be a time stamp of one summer. It's got to be every single summer. And you know what? Financially, I wouldn't do a video on it because it's boring, but financially, this summer transfer window has not been bad for Manchester United. We've had... I was talking to somebody about this literally last night in the pub, and I said, you know what? They were a Villa fan, and they were saying, you've spent 200 million. And I said, you know what? We have spent 200 million, but no United fan are really looking at net spend or anything like that, because we've actually sold quite a lot of players as well. And we've come out of this summer with 2 centre-backs, a full-back, a midfielder, a striker. And we're really happy with that. And normally, you'd have a net spend of about 250 million quid. and you'd be shitting yourself going, they've got to work, they've got to work. I look at that summer transfer window for United, and we have spent £200 million, but we've also made a lot of money from sales, and we've done these deals in a way that we're not paying stupid wages. Some of these deals are being done in installments. What I'm saying is we can replicate next summer the same as this summer and still bring in 4 or 5 good players, because we didn't pay stupid transfer fees, we didn't pay stupid wages, and we've got players out of the club high wages as well. So we can definitely replicate this again next summer. And I agree with Barada, we should be looking to do that. So what about Barcola? Mark says RB Clank. I mean, good player. I mean, there's so many good players out there. I mean, I couldn't believe what's his name at PSG is still, what, 18, 19? Zaire Emery. There are so many players. I tell you what, there's a lad at Dortmund, Gittins. Did you see the 2 goals he scored for Dortmund last week? Bloody hell. I mean, I don't know whether he's a striker or a left winger, but I tell you what, keep your eye on him. He looks like a player as well. There's so many good young players now. I'm not dismissing EZE, but I feel like EZE, you know, there'll be better players than him 5 years younger and £20 million cheaper. So I just think if we end up getting EZE, great. But it's next summer. Let's scout. Let's be thorough. We've got to hit that South American market as well. We've got to hit that South American market, because Ten Hag valued it massively at Ajax, and he had scouts who could do it. I know for a fact, we've been talking about it for about 18 months, that it is an area that Man United want to exploit and do better in. And also on top of that, you've also got the fact that there are so many very, very good opportunities out there. I mean, I can see people throwing names into the chat. I've just written one down, and you're absolutely correct. There are probably 3 or 4 players playing in South America at the moment. A couple Argentinian, I think one's Brazilian, maybe 2's Brazilian, who are considered to be players that by the next World Cup they'll be playing in Europe. So there is such the thing about the South American market, it's never going to stop. Poverty, wealth, whatever you want to describe South America, there is a contrast between that, but they never stop playing football. Like, they are going to keep producing these players. If we do need to sign someone for the homegrown quota, who would you go for if not EZE? Says Steve. Well, I mean, I think an obvious one would be Wharton at Crystal Palace, if we're staying at Crystal Palace. Look, this is difficult. I think the homegrown issue is better solved by youth development. Mainu, Garnacho have solved us homegrown problems by, being teenagers that come into the team, and I think you've got to look at that as well. Hopefully Collier can do the same. Amas can do the same. The lad from Crystal Palace and the lad from Arsenal, and the same with the lad from Mali. They are not, I don't think any of them are English. I think isn't the lad from Arsenal Danish? Obviously the lad from Mali, and the Crystal Palace lad, maybe he's Danish, I forget. But the bottom line is they're homegrown, because they'll all have played for 3 years before 21 for Man United. So I think that's how you solve your homegrown problem. And funnily enough, this is what Real Madrid do. Go and buy 17, 18-year-olds who are going to be the next big thing. And this is why Favel's very important. We get locked in on homegrown. You've got to have a British passport. It's gonna absolutely destroy the British media. But if Man United solve the homegrown problem by buying 16, 17-year-olds and making them have 3 years before, happy days. But actually, who's actually homegrown that I would bring into Manchester United? Well, we've mentioned Anthony Gordon. I still think Declan Rice was a player that Man United missed out on. Brilliant signing for Arsenal, but I think that was the player that we probably should have got if you wanted to go and get an English player that would have made a big difference for us. What's your prediction for the game, says Kian? I'm not doing a prediction for Southampton yet, mate. It's still a little bit of time off, but we have to win, definitely. Branthwaite as well, Ken. You're absolutely right. Would you take Adeyemi from Dortmund, says Sean. I think we've got to see what happens with Xerxes and Rasmus and Ahmad and Garnacho before we start thinking about any more forwards. We do need a winger. I don't really see Adeyemi as a creative winger. So for me at the moment, I'm not really looking at that type of a player. Acid23 says, saw a couple of reports yesterday that we're looking at a lad from River Plate. He looks fantastic. With him only being 16, he could become homegrown. Exactly. There was that lad, I forget his name, someone in the chat will know, that we got linked to, the centre-back from Argentina. I think he ended up going to Chelsea. So there's a lot of people out there that we can go and get. If we're talking about next summer, I think we need to just go for the obvious names. Hopefully we are more creative, says John. Man City lease their stadium from the council, but take all the revenue from stadium activity. Ownership doesn't necessarily mean ownership of income, says Duncan. Exactly, and I think that's the most important thing. But if you're leasing the stadium, then you're still paying out, aren't you? I mean, I'd much rather we built a stadium on land that we own, and we own the land. We own the land that we're going to build the stadium on. Even if we keep Old Trafford and build one next to it, we own the land. So why would we lease our stadium? Only because we can't afford to build it, which for me, Anselmino, that was the name. It's Anthony Gordon for me all day. Newcastle need to sell, says Ben Jones. Marlow FC says, EZE makes sense. We've got rid of a lot of homegrown players and only bought in foreign. I think we did that one, didn't we? Right. Keep your questions coming in. I'm about to do something here that I'm very, very happy to do because I like it when people set challenges. So yesterday, Ronaldo sat there and was given a list of players that he'd played with from people like Ryan Giggs, Marcelo, Xavi Alonso, and he basically had to start off with two names, and then he picked who he thought was better, and then another name would come on, and it was winner stays on. So I've been given this list from Chris, who is a regular watcher of the show, so shout out for Chris. Thanks very much for your email. And basically what he said is, I've got 10 players for you, Mark. We're going to start off with Giggs against Beckham. I've been watching the show for years, and I think I know who your favourite Man United players are. I've basically put them together in a list, and I'm intrigued to see who will win out on this and who will get the most wins, because obviously it doesn't necessarily mean the same player is going to stay on. I've looked at the list, I've glanced at it, I'm just going to freestyle this. I haven't thought about it a hell of a lot, and I think even if I had thought about it, if I did it 3 times, I'd do a different list every single time. So get ready to play along with this. Chris, you're an absolute legend. Thank you very much. So it's either or, winner stays on. Manchester United style. You could say legends, because I think virtually every single one of them is. And I'm really happy that he threw Dennis Irwin in. That's all I'm going to say. Unfortunately, he's not made it easy for me. If he'd given us any players from the last sort of 10 years, I'd have been laughing, because I could have just gone easy. There are no players from the last 10 years. So this is going to be tough. Get ready. Here we go. Just a little bit of light relief in the middle of the show. So we're starting off with David Beckham against Ryan Giggs. I am going to go against Ronaldo on this, and I'm going to go with David Beckham. I just loved David Beckham growing up. I think he got the most out of his talent, and I just think if I had to bring Beckham or Giggs back at the moment, I'd bring Beckham back, because mentality, personality, skill level, probably a bit underrated. I'm going Beckham. Beckham or Cantona? Oh, Chris. I'm going to go Beckham. I'm going to go Beckham. I'm going to get slaughtered, but it has to be Beckham for me. I mean, Cantona was the spark. Cantona was a legend. He was more than football. But Beckham was one of my favourite players, so ever. So I'm going to go Beckham over Cantona. Bloody hell. Third, we've got Vidic. Love Vidic. My favourite centre-back Man United have ever had in my lifetime. But yeah, easy Beckham over Vidic. Beckham over Rooney. God. Chris. Oh, God. Yeah. I'm going to go Beckham. Loads of people are going to say Rooney, because Rooney to them is what Beckham was to me growing up. So I'm going to go Beckham. Beckham over Keane. Beckham or Roy Keane? Keane. Because Roy Keane's my favourite ever player. Yeah, Roy Keane is manager on the pitch. I mean, if you had Roy Keane at Man United, we wouldn't be where we are. I mean, I've never seen a player, and I think the older generation would say Brian Robson, I've never seen a player manage a team on the pitch that well. I mean, he was just a manager. Was he with him on the pitch? You weren't worried. Keane or Van Nistelrooy? Hey, Van Nistelrooy's a cracking striker, but easily Roy Keane for me. Keane or Scholes? Again, I think this depends on where you're coming at it. I love Paul Scholes. Technically way better than Roy Keane, but I'm still going to go with Roy Keane because of an underrated player, Roy Keane, as well as these leadership skills and strong mentality. So still Keane for me. Keane or Irwin? Well, the battle of the Irish lads, and we need more Irish lads in a United shirt. I love Dennis Irwin. He's the best fullback we've ever had in my lifetime. Massively, massively underrated, but I'd have to go Roy Keane there. Keane or Carrick? I like Carrick. Carrick is magic in that midfield, and again, massively underrated, and he deserves to be on that list, but it's definitely Roy Keane. And then Roy Keane or Cristiano Ronaldo? I mean, I love Roy Keane, and I prefer Roy Keane to Cristiano Ronaldo, but there is a line that you can't cross. And I think Cristiano Ronaldo, in those last 2 years at Manchester United, especially when he won the Ballon d'Or, it's got to be Ronaldo. It's got to be Ronaldo. I'd be an absolute prat if I went Keane over Ronaldo. So it's got to be Ronaldo. Keane or Anthony, says Amosh. Oh, it's a close one. But no, I loved that from Chris. And I hope you did like it, playing it along as well. I loved that. Very, very, very difficult ones. And yeah, it's, as David said, it's astounding that nobody puts Irwin in the debate for the best fullback in the Prem. Mate, as soon as I had that email, I thought we'll definitely do it on the show because people will enjoy it. But also, I love the fact that Chris clearly watches the show, because the fact that he put people like Carrick and Irwin in there, he obviously knows what I think about those sort of players as well. Very, very tough. And there's a lot of players that you could have added in there, but it probably would have made it a little bit easier. But I'd go through that list and change. I mean, sometimes I might put Giggs ahead of Beckham, or I might put Cantona ahead of Beckham, or I put Rooney ahead of Beckham. Like, it was very good. Well done. Hi, Mark. Did you give up FIFA content? No, waiting for the new game, Scourge. Can't wait. Really excited to get the FIFA career back. Actually scheduling when I'm going to be doing the streams. I did that on the diary yesterday, actually. So very excited for my Man United career mode. It will be back. Looking forward to it. In case you ain't heard yet, says Love United. Somebody wants you to go and see. Mate, I'd had a few to drink on Friday, right? I broke my own rule. I'll apologise to this community. I don't mind people using me for clout. It happens all the time. But I shouldn't have responded. And I'm certainly not interested in communicating or finding out who these people are. Because I went to Old Trafford for the first time as a kid in 1989. If people want to know my story, buy that best-selling Sunday Times book. That's my response about how many times I've been to Old Trafford and what age I was when I went to Old Trafford. And also, I would say, I think it's a very, very sad world when people think you're a better fan based on how many games you've been to. Because trust me, I've been to plenty of games in my life. And I've sat next to season ticket holders at Old Trafford, and I'm sure you people are going to resonate as well. They go every single week, and they haven't got a fucking clue when they're talking about football. So don't start thinking if you go to football matches, it makes you a super fan. I know people who've never been to Old Trafford, never been to the Emirates, never been to Anfield, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United fans, who I would sit and talk to for hours, and they've never been for various reasons. And I know people that go every week, and you'd trust your dog to have a better opinion than them. So this nonsense about being a match-going fan makes you a better fan than anybody else. It's a type of bigotry, to be honest with you. It's a type of elitism. We've got the best fans in the world when it comes to our away support. They're incredible. But don't be telling people they're not a fan just because you go to every single game. Like, that's... Why are they not a fan? Why are they not a fan? Why are you better than them? It's completely different. You don't need to do that. I personally think our away support is the best in the world, and the people that are going to all those games, where they go, the money they spend, they're the lifeblood of football. And for me, I hold them up on a pedestal 100%. But you don't need to be chanting about it yourself. What does it matter? And also, we're talking about a new stadium. We're talking about new signings. Where do you think the money comes from? Because it doesn't come from the 15 to 20,000 away fans that go to every single game. It comes from the millions of fans all around the world, in India, Australia, America, buying shirts, pumping millions. Look, it's simple economics. Match-going fans are a minute percentage of the revenue that allows us to rebuild a stadium, to buy players, that brings sponsors in. You know, sponsors on our shirt, Snapdragon, they're not giving Man United tens of millions of pounds just because the away fans might know who Snapdragon are. They're doing it because, well, they're actually doing it not even for Man United fans. They're doing it because Man United will be watched by loads of fans. I mean, look at our watch along. We're losing to Crystal Palace. We're start of the game, 60,000 people watching. 3-0, 100,000 people watching. That ain't Man United fans going, oh, I forgot. That is rival fans coming in to take the piss out of us. Man United are big news. Even our support, even our support isn't why we make so much money. There's people who watch Man United who don't even support Man United. So the modern game of football is impossible. And I've never had a copy of the book, but it's impossible to say you're a better fan than anybody else, because football, when it comes to the owners of this football club, it's all about exposure. That's what it is. And that benefits all of us. We won't be able to buy players if we don't continue to build the club. What's your prediction for the game? I've done that one. If we're talking about next summer, says John, I would like to think that we just don't go for the obvious names. Hopefully we are more creative, says John. Yeah, well, I agree with that, 100%. I think that as much as it's exciting to bring in De Ligt and Mazraoui, etc., these three young players we brought in, I'm not saying they'll all be successful, but, I mean, what will be more exciting for you? De Ligt being a success, or that striker from Arsenal banging in 20 goals a season from the age of 18? You know, that's what we're all about, isn't it? Development of youth. So I think that there is certainly something to be said in relation to that, and you've got to have that, you know, multi-layered approach. Sorry, I'm just putting that up there for those clout chasers who like spreading lies and stuff, because that book's out now and you can read it. Obviously, to the real ones, if you want to get the book, scan the QR code, links in the description. You could be listening to it later, but my story in football and, you know, everything about that is in the book for you. You can read that. Cheers, Mark. Quiz question. Do you remember which player was swapped with Newcastle to get Andy Cole in 1995? Mate, I would know any question from that period more than I'd know anything from 2005, because that was me paper round bridge, which is also in the book. I was the original Fabrizio Romano at that time. That was prime Goldbridge, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do his paper round. It was Keith Gillespie. I think it was 6 million we paid for Cole, plus it was a 7 million deal because Gillespie went for 1 million as part of that. So yeah, prime. You know, I would have been breaking that news on the school bus, because I'd have been up at 6 o'clock reading the papers. Of course, there was no internet in those days, and I remember getting on the school bus when I was about, oh God, it was, what was it? What year did we sell? What year did we sign Keane? Was it 93? Yeah, I'd have been young, secondary school then. Got on the school bus, was telling all my mates that Keane was coming to United. And obviously there was a few Forest fans on that bus because I lived in Nottingham. And one of the older lads at the back shouted me down to the back of the bus. I was like, okay. And he was like, what's this rumour you're spreading that Keane signed for United? He's going to Blackburn. And I was like, no, he's going to Manchester United. Oh, what? Who are you? And I was like, well, I do a paper round and it's all over the papers. Have you got a paper? No. Basically got ridiculed. But I stood my ground. And on the school bus home that night, I got an apology. And after that point, I was the Fabrizio Romano. Because there was no bloody internet in those days. So, you know, what they say, early bird catches the worm. I'd done my paper round. I knew all the news. And from that moment on, I used to get invited up to the back of the bus at least once a week by the lads at the back to say, have you got any news and stuff? So I genuinely think Fabrizio Romano probably was on that bus. Actually, he probably wasn't born, to be fair. But those were the days. Those were the days. It was a different way of getting you. I mean, I used to run home from school, off the school bus, into the kitchen, bowl of ready break, sprinkle a load of cornflakes, about 2 spoonsful of sugar, mix it all up, get in front of the telly, kick my sister out the way, get that shit off, teletext, page 312, latest transfer news. That was it. 3 pages. Didn't even care if United run it. United Stan will always be the go-to channel, says Let's Be Sheris. I watch many others, which in a way you've been a part of building. Keep it up. Love the passion. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that. Fair play. It's a saturated market now as well. Cheers, Mark. I've done that one from Stephen. We need United Stand career mode again, says Scourge. And yeah, well, I'm doing United career mode first. I'm very excited about doing it as well. I genuinely think I'm going to win the league in my first Man United FIFA career mode because Goldbridge ball is better than Ten Hag ball, and I think the players there will make me better. But yeah, I'm getting too excited about it. 312 was transfer news, I thought. 302 was football. Yeah, there's some old timers in here as well. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. Absolute legends. Loved the show this morning. I got sacked last time, top of the league. Yeah, I was top of the fucking league though, Manic. Top of the league. Thank you very much. Stephen says, I watch other channels. Yours is miles above them. I think, look, respect. It's hard work. I don't know why I'm answering this. I've sort of started, so I've got to finish. Look, it's hard work to do what we've done. So it must be hard work for everyone else to do what they do. But I was talking to somebody about this at the weekend. I'm old enough to remember the Britpop era when Oasis came out and Blur, and they were the originals. And within 2 or 3 years, it just died because loads of other bands came along doing the same thing, maybe not as well or similar, and it saturates. And I do worry about that a little bit. I don't worry about it because we're Oasis, and you know we can probably retire and then get back together in 20 years. But it is quite a saturated market. I don't know how you find the time, really. I mean, we do 3 shows a day. But fair play, it's hard work. Although I think there is a lot of similarities, I suppose, isn't there? But whatever. Yeah, shouldn't have got involved in that. Was the guy on the bus a 50-year-old Ricky? Says Parker. Ricky must have been on teletext. I've never asked Ricky that question. He must have been on teletext. It must have been on it 24/7. Awesome bands like Franz Ferdinand came along, says Mick. And what do you think of Agate? Very excited, Jordan. I think he plays tomorrow, doesn't he, for Uruguay? So hopefully that gets through that. Look, most of our players have done really well on international duty. We were talking about it over the weekend, but even I think Christian Eriksen played, didn't he? So yeah, lovely stuff. Thanks everyone for watching. Beth's back at 2. I'm back at 8. We've got some cracking content for you this week, actually, because I think Ten Hag presser might be Thursday, which means I'll probably do the preview Wednesday, 12:30 Saturday, early kickoff. I've got that Anana video I've got to do as well. It's ready. It's basically ready. Yeah, that's ready to go as well. And I think there's a lot of news that's going to start dropping this week that journalists have been holding back on as well, which is why we probably had about the stadium. So keep your eyes peeled. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. Have a great week. Would you sign EZE? 71% of you would. There we go. Take care, legends. I will speak to you all in a bit. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you want to get the book, that's right next to me. That's just because I saw it on the screen. But yeah, take care, stay safe, and I'll speak to you all in a little bit. Oh, don't forget, I knew there was something. I'm live again in an hour. We're in the Goldbridge Arms. Sobering up. I'm going to have a coffee. Basically, tune in at midday. the That's Football Goldbridge Arms, we're doing a Premier League half-term report 3 weeks into the season. We're looking at the clubs in trouble. Man United are going to feature, what we were expecting over the next few weeks. Also, there's a really good section in there about the best 5 players in the world at the moment and who's going to be the best 5 players in the next 2 years, which I think from Man United's point of view might be worth watching, because maybe we can get a couple of these players. Maybe we already have. So check that out. It's going to be very interactive. I'll speak to you at midday on That's Football.